Well, hello, Today's guest is someone whose story is both inspiring and super transformative. Time cancer survivor, a former corporate branding executive, has really shaped some of the world's most iconic brands. Kind of cool, just saying. And now he's a sought after speaker and a personal branding coach. And so he really believes that we can truly be defined by one word, which is our core value. And so he's dedicated his life to helping people discover theirs. And it's really a cool process. He even just kind of gave me a little bit of insight. So just saying, I highly recommend hire. But his one word is catalyst. And it couldn't be more fitting. I mean, from surviving cancer to leaving a successful corporate career at 50 to pursue his purpose. I mean, come on, that's a catalyst all the way around. So not only has he transformed thousands of lives, but like he's just an incredible human. He's a TEDx speaker and he's got a podcast called The Catalyst Effect and works with entrepreneurs and these executives and even high school students. So if you're looking up on your administrative application, talk with Rich, but I love your soul, your essence, and we met through the Outlier Project, which is an
Yay.
amazing community. And
That's
so
right.
much for being here. What did I leave out? Tell me your story. We need to know the things.
No, no, no. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here. And I wish my kids spoke about me that way. I always say that. Let me just start by saying that what I really do, and I know it sounds crazy, is I help people discover their personal brand in one word, and I call it your core value. And it does two things for you. It's the thread that tells your entire story, which I help people write once we get to their one word. And it's the compass to guide
Mhm.
your future so that what you do is always in alignment with who you are.
Mm.
Basically, that's it.
I love
Everybody has
that.
a one word. Everyone's born with a core value. All I do is extract it from them so they define themselves by who they are versus what they do. Simple.
Mm. Yeah, let's dive into that real quickly before we dive into the backstory. What do you mean by people do and not who they are?
Okay, that's such a great question. I I might as well tell you the story. Let me just tell you the story how it all began because that'll answer it. That'll give you a perspective.
Mhm.
One day my son was in the kitchen, and my son, his name is Zach, and he was a senior in high school, starting a senior year. And he said to me, "Dad, I have college applications, and I'm going to have some alumni interviews. Can you help me prepare for them?" And I asked him one question that changed my life, changed his life. It made me go on this crazy journey. I said, "Tell me about yourself." And he said, "Where do I begin? What do you mean?" I go, "Just tell me anything." And he started telling me all the things he was doing. He's a senior, he likes baseball, he plays video games. And I looked at him and I said, "You don't know who you are?" And he said to me, "Why would I know who I am? They don't teach us that in high school." And so we as a society, we have been conditioned to define ourselves by what we do. That's how the world defines our identity. So when somebody
Mhm.
says, "Tell me about yourself," in my research, the majority of the people right after their first name say what they do. "Hi, I'm Rich Keller.
Mhm.
I'm a doctor, lawyer, uh, physician, whatever, marketer." And that is not what the question's asking you. I also defined myself by what I used to do: marketer, MBA, cancer survivor, marathon runner. And when I lost my jobs, I couldn't answer the question what I do. And so I thought I was worthless. And until I
Mm.
realized that that question, "Tell me about yourself," isn't asking you, "Tell me what you do." It's asking, "Tell me how you add value." And when I realized that that question asks, "Tell me how you add value," I realized in my corporate career, I used to build the identities for all these iconic brands with one word. And the one word is what they give away to help others win. And that's the value. So one in the kitchen with my son, I went, "Wait a minute. maybe this will work on personal branding. And at the time, 2017, it wasn't a big deal as it is today, personal branding. It was like, it wasn't a buzzword. And so he didn't want to work with me at first. I mean, let's be fair. I asked him to help, I'm going to
Right.
work with you to get to this one word. All he wanted was interview help. But in my head, I had this philosophy, and I started putting it towards what Zach was doing, and we came up with this one word, which is perseverer. This is a kid who never gives up. He gives to others the ability to never give up. You hire him, you put him in a situation, he's going to finish it. And so I challenged him after we got the one word. I challenged him for the next couple of weeks to write a personal statement, because you have to write a college personal statement about who you are. And the goal is you want to give your perseverer core value to a college, and in return, they give you a diploma. It's a business. They're buying your core value, and in return, so he went up to his room for a couple of weeks, and I said, grab your phone and start talking into your phone. Record yourself. Like, how would you tell the admissions committee that who you are in a story? And he wrote the most amazing story about a campfire event that he participated in camp. It was the largest time differential loss in the camp's history. The other team burned their ropes in like 11 minutes. Zach burned his ropes in like 27. It was the largest time differential, devastating. I mean, he did not want to initially write about this story, but it showed the admissions committee, this is a kid who never gives up. 27 minutes to burn those ropes. The other team was 11. And he got into Cornell, his dream school. And he wasn't the smartest kid in the world. He was a kid who
Right.
told that committee who he was. And at that moment, I hadn't quit my career yet, but at that moment, I sort of thought, why can't I help other people discover who they are at a much younger age than I did? And that led the journey for me to start thinking about, maybe I can do this. And one day at work, a couple of months later, I was getting a performance review. I was so unhappy at this place. And I was getting a performance review, and I thought it was the wrong review. It was so poor. And I just, at that moment, as a catalyst, at that moment, I got up, I closed the door, and I drew a check on a piece of paper, and I gave it to my boss. And I said, I'm giving you my 6 weeks notice. I'm going to leave with my head held high. I'm going to dot every I, cross every T. I would never burn a bridge. These are the 4 things I want. And within 5 minutes, he was like, whoa, that's the guy that I hired 3 years ago. And I said, that's the guy who can't do his job here. And so I think we need to part ways. And I didn't tell anybody. I just did it. And that night that I got home, I told my family, and I said, I quit my career today. And my son had already gotten into college. He was on his, leaving in like a week or two. And my wife said, great, go conquer the world. And I was like, really? She's like, yeah, we'll figure it out. Like, you've always wanted to, you don't want to be in corporate anymore. I was 50, and that led me to where I am today. And I'll tell the story additionally as as you ask me more questions, but I quit, and I did not know I was going to do this today, but I had quit with the idea that I was never going to corporate, but what can I do next? And that, up until that point, I had no job. I had nothing. And I was sitting at this desk, and I was like, what do I do next? And that led to where I am today.
Wow. And it's like you just kind of did it. You were like, yep, nope, I'm leaving. I'm doing this. I don't have a plan exactly, but I kind of know that I do. And I think it kind of pushes you into that mode. And you also the support, but pushes you into that mode of like, okay, what is next? And now, was this before or after journey?
Yeah, my cancer journey was at 26. I was
Okay.
diagnosed with testicular cancer. I had been dating my wife at the time, thank God. And that in and of itself at 26, waking up with cancer was my first foray into, wow, life is not a bed of roses. And at 43, my wife ended up with advanced breast cancer. And I always say to people, when a spouse, a child has cancer or yourself, the whole family has cancer. So I went through the
Mhm.
exact same, a lot worse. My wife, thank God she's alive 14 years later. But at
Mhm.
43, I was all over again doing the cancer journey. So I say two-time
Mhm.
cancer survivor because, like I said, the family was involved in the entire experience and she was involved in my experience and we just flipped the tables. And I had kids at the time. My wife was sick. I didn't have kids when I was sick.
Wow. And that's such a journey to go through once, but then to share it with your spouse and knowing how the challenge of the journey, imagine just the empathy, support, and even the worry that you probably had at the time. And I just think it's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and I just want to say that your listeners, people that are listening, I my wife's cancer, I had a breakdown. I had a nervous breakdown. I don't like that word
Mm.
nervous breakdown, but that's the only thing I can say. I had a breakdown. I thought I was going to be a widower. I thought I was going to have two. I had my kids were
Mhm.
9 and 12 at the time. How was I going to do
Mhm.
this all? But the reason I'm saying that to today is because that's when I started my therapy journey because I started
Mhm.
understanding like who am I? I depended on my wife for so long and she may not be here anymore. I had to go figure out who I was. And through that journey, a couple of years later, I quit my career and I'm doing what I'm doing today. But it was
Mhm.
all because we don't take the time to figure out who we are until we have a trigger moment. We lose a job, we lose a loved one, somebody gets sick.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to help the next generation not wait to figure out who you are. Do it now. Figure out what you give away to the world and go build on that because the more you do things that align with who you are, the more happier you'll be and the financial future will be much more robust. And I'm sort of proof of that today when I started at 50 and I want people to start much younger.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think you're so right. It's like we live with so many external labels and conditions that we've just thought were what we needed to do and be. And I love that you're encouraging the self journey because I've often said that a lot of times people don't like work because sometimes they don't like what they find. And that's okay
You
because we
bet.
can be on a
You bet.
self discovery journey and shift and change and evolve and grow.
That's
So
so
like
true.
how did you land on Catalyst? So you help your son. Did you do your word first or was his word first? And how did that go?
That's an interesting story. I love that you asked me that. I'm going to take you back a couple of years before I quit, before I started working with Zach. I was applying for a job, and this job, I was like, there's no doubt I'm getting it. Like, I walked in, I drove to the recruiter's office, I was smiling, I'd been through the interview process. I was like, dot the I's, cross the T's, I'm ready to start. And she sat me down and she said the following. She said, I can't give you the job. And I looked at her and I'm like, but I'm qualified. I'm like overqualified. She's like, I know, but and she said these words to me, they're looking for a babysitter, somebody to like manage the brand, and you're a catalyst. And at the time, which was many years ago, I was so devastated. I didn't even listen. I was like, what? What are you
Mhm.
talking about? And
Yeah.
when I started working with Zach and I started realizing, this one word works for personal branding, I thought back to the story of that recruiter, and I'm not kidding. People used to say to me, like, you're like a spark. You like always ignite things. And what's important is when people used to say to me, you simplify things. Like you really take things that are so huge. And even in marketing, when I was in branding, new products, and just let's get to the heart of it and like focus on what's important. And I started realizing, wait a minute, that woman gave me my one word without even knowing it. And that started the journey
Mhm.
after I gave Zach his one word. That started the journey of me putting it on paper and really. The story really also goes to continue it. One night I was in bed after I quit and I sat at my desk and I spoke to friends and mentors and my therapist and financial planner. And I'm like, what am I going to do next? I'm not going back to corporate. And one night in the middle of the night, my wife is an OBGYN. So she never sleeps. We never sleep. She's delivering babies a lot. And I nudged her. I got up. I stood up in bed, Candace, and I nudged her. And I went, what if I transformed 1 million lives one word at a time? And she looked at me and she's like, it sounds really good, Rich. Like, we'll talk about it tomorrow. And the next day she's like, that seems pretty interesting. And I wanted her to say no, like, no, it's not going to work, get a job. Like, I was not confident, of course not. And through talking to many people and my financial planner and deciding that, yeah, you could take some time off and figure this out, I had two friends, they're friends now, but two gentlemen, young guys, invited me to speak at a conference. And it was my one word. I was going to present it. I did. And I remember going to the conference like 6 months later from that night in bed. And I went to motivational speaking school online. I wrote a keynote. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. And I remember saying to my wife, I'll probably be back over the weekend. Like, it was a Saturday. I'll be back Sunday night. And by Monday, I'll be like doing my resume. Like, this isn't going to work. And the funny thing, after I was done speaking, people came up to me and they're like, can you help me figure out my one word? And I said, no, like, I was honest. But I said, give me your name. I took a list of names and I came home and I was working with a coach at the time. And my coach said, listen, I'm telling you, this is a contagious idea. You better figure this out. And I took the people at the conference that gave me their names and I started incubating with them. I started throwing out questions and I got everything out of my head onto the piece of paper. And 8 years later, I developed this program to get to a person's core value that they give away to the world to help others win and serve others. And people laughed. Candace, people laughed. They were like, no way, it's not going to work. And I'm passionate about it. And 8 years later, they're not laughing anymore. And I have a TED Talk
Right?
on this.
Isn't that fun? Isn't that fun how, like, when you run with it and it can seem crazy and like, yeah, you could just quit this amazing corporate job and you're like, yep, I have no backup plan,
No
but I'm gonna
money,
figure it out. And
zero.
then, you're fine. And that's the thing, but because you were aligned and you knew that this is what you could do, you went in there. Not only did you nail it, you were like, yeah, I'm gonna back up and say I can't do this, but then your coach is like, you need to do this.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
you
I was
ended up
afraid. I was
nailing it,
afraid.
right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Were
also
you
want to,
afraid of the
I
success?
also want to say, I was, yeah, I was afraid. The first 3 or 4 years, I gave away my program for free. I was like, oh, let me get you one word. You don't have to pay me, because I had a big money trauma. But I was also like, if it doesn't work, then I don't have to worry about taking their money. But what happens if it does work? And I had to work through that. And I also want to tell everyone that's listening, I loved my career with brands.
Mhm.
I worked on some of the greatest brands, but I had, as you said, some I had a desire after I had cancer and after my wife had cancer, was I wanted to impact people's lives and I didn't know how.
Mm.
When I figured out the moment with my son, I was like, as a catalyst, I'm like, I'm going. Like, I don't know where this is going to take me. I did it my way, which is, I tell people, do it your way per your core value. And I did
Mhm.
it because I wanted to be remembered. True story, at my funeral, I want to be remembered for helping
Mm.
people. I loved my brands, but it was time to move on and sort of figure out how I can make the impact that I wanted to make and just get off my chair. And
Yeah.
that was the real truth. I wanted to help people after being sick.
Mm. Yeah. Well, and it changes the desire and the purpose evolve with us, I think. And what I'm hearing you say is you're like, yeah, I work with these great companies, but I really wanted to help individual people. And what I'm also hearing that you didn't necessarily say is that you wanted to provide value back into themselves, like back into their life, for
Absolutely.
them to truly see their value.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
also saw
So,
the transformation in my son. I mean, I saw the
mhm,
confidence, like, so many of us, all of us, I'm guilty of it. If we don't have titles after our name, we don't live in a certain town, we didn't go to a certain school, we feel worthless. Like, when I didn't have a job, my wife would say to me, how was
mhm,
your day? I'm like, worthless. Nobody wants me, because I thought my value was tied, as we've been talking about, we've tied it to credentials, titles, letters. And that's when I realized my son, he feels more confident and so do I. I have to do something. I got to figure this out. I mean, it took 8 years, it's my 8th year. I had to figure it out and I have been figuring it out along and I'm moving and improving. And that's the name of the game with anybody that wants to start something that believes that they can help others win.
Mm, gosh, you have such a great heart and passion. And that I think is what drew me to bug you to have a
It
conversation.
wasn't
I was
bugging.
like, do you want to come? No, I was like, but and it's because you genuinely care and you can feel it, you can see it, and it is about such deeper work. So I think what I'm hearing you say too is that not only does the one word help you identify better, but it also gives you this deeper sense of purpose within yourself. Now, what's the difference? Okay, about how it is. You don't have to give away like how you do it, but like
Yeah,
what does the process look like for somebody trying to
sure.
find this one word?
No, that's great. That's great. Two things. I want to be very clear that the one word is two things. It's a thread to tell you a story in the past, and it's the compass to guide in the future. And the example I give is after college, without knowing anything, I didn't know my one word. I was an accountant for 5 years. My compass was
Mhm.
wrong. A catalyst should not be in accounting. So it's the thread to tell your story, the credibility, and the compass to guide yourself so that you put yourself in positions that's going to highlight who you are, your one word. Okay.
Mm,
A lot of people, I sometimes when I do Zooms with people and they say to me sometimes, I thought you were going to give me my one word on the Zoom. I'm like, no, I'd have a reality show if I did that. Like, you got to do the work. And something you said is really important. This is a self-reflection process and you have to be ready to do it. Like when I work with
mm,
high school kids, they're ready to do it because they have to apply to college. But you have to really be ready to reflect with me because what my program is, very simply, it's 11 questions that people fill out. It's a workbook. The more you give me, the more I can extract. And I read and I do the magic. I just read and I'm looking for the thread and I'm
mhm,
encapsulating everything that they wrote into one word. And I have to tell you, I finally am able to believe this. It works. I have never had
mhm,
anybody that has denied the word I gave them. They're like, oh my God, how did you figure that out? I'm like, you did the work. I give you the ing on the cake. You give me the ingredients, I give you the cake. But the 11 questions are all about you. They're not studying. You don't have to go out. There is one question that you do have to do a little bit of work on, and that is you got to reach out to 5 people that know you super well and you give them the prompt, what makes you unique, and just let them write. And I've gotten everywhere from 2 pages to 5 pages about people want to celebrate you. They want to tell you what's
mm.
unique about you. And I take that because it's important to have external feedback based on the other 10 questions. And I put it together and I go in my cauldron and I pop out a word.
That's funny. You
It's
pop
that
out a word.
simple. I mean,
Well,
it's hard, but
yeah, yeah. What I love about what you just said, and I felt that I think part of the process that your clients go through is that self reassurance and the revalidation of their worth and seeing it in a way they may never have viewed it before. Because I think it's something that we're really good at showing others what they do well and praising others. But when it comes to us, man, we are our worst critics. And
you
I can
bet.
just feel it. I can feel the healing that happens when people go through this process. And I can only imagine that that only amplifies their business returns too, just because they're showing up or whatever it is that they're doing, but like they're showing up with greater clarity, greater confidence, and just this self-renewal. It's like you like give people a mini retreat.
You know what? It's so interesting that you said that because, and this is a true story. Most of the people that I work with, when I give them their one word after, when they do the workbook, I do the analysis, write it up, and I do a Zoom. I have to tell you that most
Mhm.
people cry on the Zoom, and they
Mm,
all say to me, "I'm sorry for crying," and I'm like, "Oh no, no, tell me why you're crying because I want to learn more." And they say to me, which is
mhm,
amazing, I'm meeting myself for the first time. And that is powerful
Mm,
because that is my point about society telling us if you're not doing, you're worthless. If you don't have a job,
yeah.
there's nothing more that you need. And I'm like, and these people are saying, I have value. Oh my God, I don't have to work. I could sit in my backyard and look at the grass grow. Yeah, you got to put that value into the world now. And so the reason
Mm,
why this is so powerful is now I understand why sports athletes, when they stop, when they retire, they sort of lose
yeah.
themselves because they've been defined as the athlete. And in my world, my philosophy, no, 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 you're defined by your core value, and you can do other things now as long as you take that core value, great in sports. Now let's put it somewhere else. And that is why I love what I do, because I don't ever make people feel like what they do is it. What they do is just a piece.
Mhm,
It's that moment. Who you are is forever. And that's why, and this is over 8 years of research. And I just love when people discover that they're meeting themselves for the first time. It's true. I've heard it enough.
mhm.
They really are.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the catalysts for my journey to doing the work that I do is that I went through a really, and like, I don't say it lightly, but like a full on identity crisis where I was like,
Yeah.
and I think I was only 30. And I was like, I don't know who I am. Like, I've been everything else except for who I am. And that was a hard journey of like
Yeah.
finding myself and figuring, and what you've said earlier is like we are always evolving. We didn't say this, but we are always evolving and changing and growing and expanding. And yet our values don't necessarily shift, right?
That's exactly right. That's exact. Oh, your
Yeah.
core value. I have many people say to me, "Oh, this is my core value for this time period." I'm like, If you land on a word that you don't feel is your true essence, core, heart, it's not the word. And every time I work with people and I give them the final answer, they're like, oh my God, totally. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I have parents go, how do you know my kid better than me? I'm like, your kid did the work. I'm just helping them now to lead with that, lead with who you are. Tell me about yourself. The question should be, hi, I'm Rich Keller. I'm a catalyst, and this is what I do. Fine. Next year, 3 years from now, it could be I'm a catalyst. This is what I do next. But as long as it aligns and ladders up
Um,
to me as a disruptor to simplify, I win. And people then walk away. So
right.
they walk away like, wow, I remember that guy because he told me his one word. And that is true also. I people call me and say, I used my one word today. And I'm like, great. Like I laugh, but I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, that's the way it should be, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Can
So I
I
have
get
two
can I
things that
give
I go ahead. Go for
Go
it.
ahead. No,
No, you go.
no, no, you go. This can I give an example to the listeners so they like truly understand how it plays in the real world? Because I get a lot of times that like,
Yes.
how does this really work? Okay. So I'm gonna do an exercise. I'm gonna do an exercise with you and then and just
Mhm.
follow my lead. And then I want to know the first when I'm on stage, I do a brand exercise and I take the audience on a journey. So I want you to tell me the first word that comes to mind when I say the following brand. You ready?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. The brand is Apple. Tell me the first word that came into your head. Don't think, don't
Okay.
overthink.
Well, we did this one, so I can say it, but it's simplicity is what I would say. Simplicity.
You
Like they
okay,
make
cool,
it
you've
yeah.
done okay. Do you remember
Yeah.
what you
We
originally
did.
said when we first spoke? I don't remember what you said.
I feel like it was ease of access or something along those lines. Like it was
Okay.
like
So
accessibility. Yeah,
okay.
accessibility because you can
Okay.
do multiple things. Yeah.
You're a lot smart. You're a lot smarter than most people out there. When I'm on stage and I have the audience write the first word and then I ask them what it is, most people say computer, they say AirPod, they say iPhone, they say technology, they say expensive. And what they're telling me is
Mm,
what Apple does. And that is totally appropriate. I'm expecting people, the first word is what you do. And then when I take them on the journey of the one word, I'll take somebody from the audience and I'll say to them, okay, now let's figure out what Apple's one word is that makes them multi-billion dollars. And I say to the audience member, tell me why you use Apple. Why do you use Apple products? And they have an Apple. I always make sure they have an iPhone. And the first thing they say is, oh my God, it's so easy. Like it's my whole life is like everything connects. And I'm like, oh, stop right there. And the word is simplicity. And I say to them, why didn't you tell me that when I first asked you? And they go, because I never thought of that. And then I say to them, tell me what you remember about Steve Jobs. He's no longer with us, but what do you remember in every photo? And they're like, I think he wore the same shirt, they usually say same shirt, it was black. And I'm like, that's right, because
Yeah.
his core value was simplicity. And he got on every stage and he embodied simplicity. And all he did was take Steve and Apple, and the bridge is simplicity. And every product go encompass. Every product is simple. If you don't launch a product at Apple that is simple, it's not going to work. And the audience is like,
Mm.
oh, I never thought of that. And that's my philosophy. You've got to figure out what you give away to the world to make it better. And that's your core value. And then go find a situation that allows you to celebrate it and you win.
Yeah. God, that's so cool. Yeah, one of the things that because I was going to ask you that in application, but one of the things I thought about that I want to make sure I share with you is that this would be so and I'm going to say healing because the work I do, but
Of course.
I can see how it's so healing for children because you just said it like, oh, like, my kid better. And it's like, well, yes and no, but it's like, think about the impact of the parent having that one word, the child having that one word, and the bridge in understanding that is possible from because then you see your child in a different way. They see you in a different way. Oh my gosh. I'm like, my brain is going wild right now. So
And I'm glad that you said that, because what I hear from parents and kids all the time is there's so much pressure today to get into college. There's so much pressure to have all these activities. And I understand. I have two children that went through the process. And so they're so overwhelmed that when they realize, wait a minute, I do have value. The relief is there, but it's also like they can then go write a story. It's so easy, much easier to write the story that's unique to them because they're telling a story about how they are their core value. So the
mm,
confidence and the credibility to take it with you as you go into college. I didn't know that in the beginning, to be honest. Like I learned all that, but it's so true. It's like I don't yes, the activities are important, but they're not as important as who are you and why are you doing these activities? Are they highlighting you? The whole game changes when I work with them.
gosh. Well, and so I guess my next question would be how do you encourage people apply their one word once you get it? Because you've alluded to it a few times, and I'm like, okay, pretend like I don't know anything about this, and I'm like, okay, now I have this one word. What do I do? I just tell people that I have this word? Like, what do I do?
Yeah, yeah. No, 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 that's a great point. That's a great point. So I work with high school students, and their whole college application becomes a story, their personal statement, their supplementals, their activities. When I work with college students, they have their one word, which is then put into a story of tell me about yourself, Candace. You're able to start with your one word and start telling your story, and the examples highlight your
Mhm.
stories. Okay. Just like Apple's
Mm,
products highlight that it's
mhm.
simple. When I work with entrepreneurs, which is so great, I love working with entrepreneurs. What you're selling is your core value. You are not selling your product or service. You're selling your core value because you are the brand. You're the brand. They bought Steve
Mhm.
Jobs. They didn't buy Apple. Steve's job was to bring
Oh,
Apple and Steve together with his one word. Spanx sells confidence, not underwear. And Sarah Blakely's whole story is about confidence. So you bridge it because they're buying Sarah. They're not buying underwear. They're buying her. But what they're buying is the confidence in wearing the product because I want to feel great. So when I work with entrepreneurs, I
mhm.
always say to them, we have to figure out what you're actually selling. And then I work with business leaders and companies because they want to navigate up the corporate ladder, but they don't necessarily know the most effective way to do it. And the way to do it is to take your core value and go put yourself in positions that allow you to highlight that core value so you can move up the ladder. So each application is different, but it's the same idea. It's figure out that core value of yours that you give away in college applications, in interviews, in your business venture. or in the company.
Yeah. Oof. And see, now I need my one word. It's like you always think you're I'm like sitting there going, okay, now I got to figure this out. I'll have to work with you on that because I think again, it goes back to so many people struggle with identity. They just don't necessarily know it. Um, and
Yeah.
one more question,
Yeah.
and I know that we've gone over on
Sure.
time for you, so I appreciate it. It's been just such a great conversation.
Oh,
Um,
please. I could
how
spend all day.
Yeah, how different you've worked with these big companies, and by the way, like, if you were to ask me Nike, I would say, like, Action is what I think when I think
No,
Nike. No,
close.
dang it. Close.
Nike's one word is greatness. Greatness. That's why they use elite athletes
Really?
because you aspire to want to be
Mm,
like them. It's your definition of greatness. So it's they give away this aura of greatness and you become the inner athlete and want to be like the elite
mhm.
athletes that they advertise.
Do y'all see how easy he did that? Like, let's just reverse that. So real quickly, how different is it for personal branding versus a business, not a business, but like these iconic brands into personal branding? Personal branding is talked about all the time, all the time. What do you think? I'm
Yeah.
going to re-ask the question. What do you think people get wrong when they're looking at personal branding? I mean, I kind of feel like we answered this, but we're going to roll with anyway.
No, that's great. That's great. To me, personal branding and business branding or corporate branding are one and the same. Branding is
Mm,
helping others win. Personal branding is how do you help others win? And what I tell people is they're buying you. When an entrepreneur is building a business, they're buying the entrepreneur. The goal is to bridge yourself like Steve Jobs did in front of Apple by telling them that you sell simplicity. What I feel that people get wrong, and I work with a lot of people on this, is I'm going to say a statement and then I'll talk about it. Credentials are credibility, not identity. I want to say that again,
mm,
credentials are credibility, not identity. And so many people tie themselves up into their credentials. That's what they do. The credibility is I do XYZ, but the identity is who
mhm,
you are. So, like, for example, I am a catalyst and I have a one word philosophy. In order to really believe me, my credential of a TED talk, now people go, oh, let me go watch it. This guy must have some merit. So that credential is the credibility for me to be a catalyst to get you to the one word. So I want everybody to walk away and understand
mm.
that credentials are just credibility. You need them. But you got to figure out your identity so that you can go figure out what to do and then get the credential to support what you're doing.
Oh my gosh, that was its own mic drop, like TED Talk could be a thing. Anyways. Well, thank you. Like
Oh,
you're
thank you.
phenomenal at what you do. How can people
I
work with you?
appreciate it.
What's the best way to reach out to you? And is there anything you're working on that we need to know about?
So you can get me on LinkedIn. You could type in Rich Keller, the catalyst, and I'll come up. You can watch my TED Talk at therichkeller.com/TEDx. Okay.
Mhm.
And my website is therichkeller.com, but you'll see on my homepage /TEDx. I am working right now on a free guide on the one word personal brand that I am going to be giving out very shortly. And it's got examples, it's got brands I worked on, it tells you about the thread and compass, and it'll give you a good sense
Mhm.
of if you do want to work with me, just send me a DM through LinkedIn because I love working with high school students. I love working with college students, entrepreneurs, and business leaders. And that's
Mhm.
me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this has been incredible. I appreciate your
Thank
energy and
you.
like I again I'm just want to shout out Scott McGregor and Kathy Love for
The best.
like helping every one of us here because I get the opportunity to meet really great humans like Rich and have these
Same here.
conversations. So, well, thank
Same
you
here.
everyone. We'll make sure to like comment and do all the things here in a little bit because like being distracted is not great for anyone. But I hope you have a great day and we will see you next time.
Candace, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. I'm really grateful to be here.